the past, web analytics, and not digital analytics, but web analytics was defined as the measurement, collection, analysis, and reporting of internet data for the purpose of understanding and optimizing web usage. So as we saw in the first lesson, it's important to go beyond this restrictive definition of what is web analytics and embrace digital analytics. There are still components of data collection, measurement, analysis, reporting, and visualization. But the difference is that we're not web-centric, we're not marketing-centric. We want to use the right data in the right context to inform business decisions. So today's the role of digital analysts is quite different. We are change agents, as I mentioned, because we know how to make sense of the data. We want to bring it to life and be able to convey an understanding of what is possible. So by breaking something complex into smaller parts, again, we can also understand the constraints and what is possible given the specifics of your organizational environment. So in this lesson, we're going to learn about the digital analytics maturity model, which is a concept that I've created years and years ago as a way to assess your organization's strengths and weaknesses, your capabilities over various key areas of maturity. So this is how we're going to look at people, process, and technology, but with a broader understanding of what are the factors that will help you succeed in digital analytics. So there are a couple of famous guidelines, I would say, and one of them came from Avinash Kaushik a number of years ago. It's called the 10-90 rule. What it stated was that if you have only $100 to spend on digital analytics, $10 should be spent on the tools and $90 should be spent on the people using those tools. And, be it 10-90 or 20-80, the concept is that people are more important than the tools. And the great thing is, in this course, you are developing your skills as an analyst. You're going to be able to apply that regardless of the tool. So your value in the market is going to increase. So analysts are, we can extract data from the tools. There are tools that will spit out a number of interesting data and interesting reports. But without an analyst to really understand what is going on, you won't be able to provide valuable insight, things that the business will care about. So not just data. Data is easy to get. At a certain point, information is relatively easy to get also. But you need to go beyond that. You need to understand the business. You need to be able to provide actionable insight. Another example of a guideline, again put forth by Avinash Kaushik, is the 20-80 rule about the work of an analyst. So ideally, we would like to spend a very little amount of time doing just reporting, because reporting is typically available out of the box from a tool, and frankly, anyone can go in a tool, look at the numbers, and make up their own mind. The analyst brings a lot more value because of the unique skills of the analyst to be able to bring context to the data. The sad reality, and it's true in digital analytics, it's true in business intelligence and other fields, we spend a lot of time getting the data ready and very little time doing real analysis work. So maybe it looks more like this, where you do some reporting, but you should also spend time looking at the various acquisition strategies, looking at understanding customer experience, looking at staying plugged into the context, understanding the business, the evolution of the business. But it could also be understanding the evolution of our industry, the digital analytics industry, and knowing that there are new tools and concepts out there that could be useful for your analysis. Exploring new strategic options to influence the business. And of course, you need some breaks and lunch in those times. So maybe the part missing here is the sad reality that you could have another circle that would go around this one that would be about getting the proper tags on the site to collect the right information, also transforming and preparing all of that data so you can actually do analysis. So what are some of the mistakes that we see most often when it comes to digital analytics? One of those is failing to understand the issue of integration, the data collection itself, the tagging, as we call it, or integrating data from the website with other data source. It takes a lot of time. It is complex. Failing to realize the limits of unstructured data, or we could even just say fail to realize the limits of data in the first place. The different tools have different ways of collecting the data. They have different meanings. So you could even end up with two metrics that are very similar but somewhat different because one comes from a social media source, the other one comes from a different tool, and you try to match those numbers and they simply don't match. A third mistake is to assume that correlation has any meaning to explain something, and it's easy to find correlation where there's actually no relationship, no meaning. It's easy to fall into some kind of self-fulfilling prophecy where we seek the data that will justify or satisfy our hypothesis instead of the other way around. And then underestimating the labor skills needed. We often get told that such and such tool are going to make the job super easy and anyone can do it and so on. But it's not always true. Yes, some tools can make our job easier, but certainly not easy. And as the tools get better, the expectation, the complexity of what we have to work with is increasing faster. So there's always a lot of demand in the market for people with the right talent to leverage data. The team and expertise, of course, is super important. It's not about knowing how to use a specific tool, but it's about being smart, being intelligent, being able to exercise judgment, and be able to apply those skills in the way that you're going to analyze data. So the team and expertise is quickly represented by the way the skills are structured within the organization. So how does the organization structure its data and analytics resource and team? So maybe there's no dedicated resources. Maybe there's a project team, again, is a challenge because the project is eventually going to end and those people assigned to the project are going to go back to their business doing something else. Or maybe it's just a part-time analyst, and that's a challenge because the field of expertise is so complex that working on your own part-time is very difficult. So it's getting better when you have a full-time analyst, a distributed team, so different skill sets, but reporting to different managers. While at level 4, you have a multidisciplinary team of people working for the same single manager. And at level 5, you've reached a point where your business stakeholders, your users, are empowered. They know how to get to the information they need, and they understand what it means, and they can make decisions on their own. Area number 4 is by far the weakest spot. So there's some benchmark data about the digital analytics maturity levels of different organizations. And by far, it's always the weakest spot. So we want to be able to have a methodology in place, a process in place, so that when we do something, we know the recipe. So compare that to a cookbook. You can follow the cookbook, but it won't make you a master chef. Here, we want to be able to do is to identify problems and opportunities, develop hypotheses, analyze, and provide insights. If you don't have any methodology, every time you have to do an analysis, you start from scratch. You don't know how to do it. Maybe over time you've defined your own way. So first time you do an analysis of your campaign performance on Google search, maybe it's a little bit more difficult, but over time you know that, oh, if I have to do it again, this is how I do it. It's good, but the problem is if you go on vacation or if you leave the organization, that knowledge is lost. Maybe as a team, as a group of people working together, maybe you have defined your own methodology. Again, It's not bad. Every time someone new comes to the team, you have to train them. There's a learning curve. While at level 3, if you use a proven methodology, and in this course, I'm going to show you one proven methodology that can be used to do analytics. The benefit is there are probably training, books, resources that you can leverage, even courses that you're going to be able, when you hire someone, to say knowledge of such and such methodology is a criteria for this job. At number 4, you are agile, but for online tasks. For example, it is very likely that your website has been developed with agile development concepts in mind. But how is it that once the website is live, we want to do analysis and we don't use an agile methodology to do our analysis? That doesn't make sense. But the rest of the organization maybe is not as agile as the web environment or the digital environment. So that's why at level 5, the whole organization is agile, be it for offline or online processes. So there's quick evolution, quick adaptation of the environment and how to leverage that. It's important to note that agile doesn't necessarily mean agile development as in developing websites. There's important aspect of agile management, which is a philosophy of management. So the agile methodology that we're going to use is called Lean Six Sigma, and it has a couple of easy to understand improvement steps that we can go through. It's the benefit of Lean Six Sigma. It's a well-defined set of practice aiming at eliminating defects. So it used a lot of segmentation of data, slicing and dicing of the data, looking at it in different ways, if you like. It is perfect as a continuous improvement process when the environment is changing and evolving quickly. But it also has in its mindset the fact that it's a collaborative team effort that will lead to success. So let's look at what are the DMAIC improvement cycle. So we start with define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. So the DMAIC acronym is define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. So we're going to be able to look into the details of each of those steps. But briefly, what we mean here is you start by defining what is the problem you're trying to solve. What is the opportunity you're trying to capture? What data is available? And if it's not available, how will I collect it? Analyze, we want to find correlations and patterns in the data in order to understand what's going on. And in the improve phase, we want to be creative in order to provide recommendations that are both meaningful, relevant, appropriate, given the context. And control is, once we've done those changes, we want to make sure that we've actually achieved a sustainable improvement. We want to come back to it and make sure that, yes, indeed, we improved the outcomes. So the goal here is, you might have seen information in the past about Six Sigma, and there are caveats. There are ways of using Six Sigma in different ways, and they have different training levels. You can be a green belt or a black belt, a bit like in karate, but the precepts or the concepts of Six Sigma are pretty simple. It has the user in mind all the time. You want to deliver consistent quality. It is data-driven. You want to increase velocity, and velocity is improving the speed at which you deliver value to the organization. So imagine that through the DMAIC cycle, imagine that you reduce the time between the moment you find a problem on your website, a problem in the user experience, you find that problem, and you reduce the time between the moment you find the problem and the moment you solve the problem. You've just increased velocity. You're providing additional value faster to the organization. Six Sigma or Lean Six Sigma also provides a lot of tools and a good framework to get going quickly, and it allows you to quantify the complexity of what's going on. So all of that readily apply to our environment. So it's really fascinating to see that Lean Six Sigma or Six Sigma was developed maybe 20 years ago and apply in an environment for manufacturing, but we can readily leverage this expertise that was developed over time and apply it in our field, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. The last dimension is the tools, technology, and data integration. And interestingly enough, this is probably the one that has the least influence on your ability to be successful with analytics. So we have this great saying, do not put your faith in what statistics say until you have carefully considered what they do not say. So I don't mind which tool you are using or how big your big data is. That's not what is really important. You can have a lot of insight with small data and simple tools. It's all a matter of balancing all the aspects of your digital analytics practice. So the questions are, it's not about which tool you are using, it's about the level of sophistication in the way you are using those tools. So maybe you don't have a tool, that would be the lowest level. Maybe you have out-of-the-box solution like Clickstream Analytics, basic instrumentation, basic implementation of Google Analytics, for example. At level 2, you have defined clear outcomes, KPIs, and dashboards. Level 3, you are using segmentation, you are applying merchandising concepts. If you are an e-commerce website, you do A/B testing, campaign optimization, you have defined personas, KPI alerts. So all of that, maybe if you are not familiar with that terminology, those are all things that we're going to cover during the course. At level 4, you use multiplicity, so multiple data sources in order to gain a better understanding of what's going on. You might be merging different marketing data sources, doing multivariate testing, behavioral targeting. That would be an indication of greater maturity. And at level 5, you use CRM data and data about your customer. With marketing, you might be doing predictive analytics and evaluating the lifetime value of your customers. So this requires a more sophisticated understanding of digital analytics or analytics concepts. There was a global organization in the gaming industry. They decided to group their 20 stakeholders, including analysts, managers, and business stakeholders, and do an internal mini conference where everyone would be presenting a little something on what they are working on. So what we did is we did a maturity assessment individually. So we asked everyone to fill out a survey. For those who are managing analytics, their perception was that everything was pretty well advanced, pretty high level of maturity, pretty well balanced, except the expertise. And they recognized that they were trying to hire more people in the team, and that's why their expertise was lacking a little bit. So very strong, very good level. When we look at who is responsible, so those are typically the analysts themselves, the picture was quite different. The picture was that most of the aspects were low. Interestingly enough, expertise was at the same level. Process was pretty high and technology was very high, but governance and objectives were very, very low compared to the perception of the managers. So right there, we see that there's a big disconnect between the perception of capabilities from one group, the managers, to the other, the people who are actually doing the analysis. And technology isn't an issue. It's actually higher than what the manager felt because the analysts were saying, we've got all the tools we need. That's not an issue. And process was also fairly high. But then this came out. Those informed people are their business stakeholders. And they are typically the product managers of the games. One of the comments was really, really clear. It said something like, I get all those great reports and they are very interesting and I get recommendations, but I don't understand how they got there. Therefore, I don't really trust it. So we see just through this simple maturity assessment involving different stakeholders, we see that the perception of capabilities was very different. So what is the solution to a scenario like this? The solution was for the managers to sit down with their analysts and really explain, this is why what you do is so important. This is how it's going to be used. This is how the stakeholders are going to be making decisions based on your data based on the information and the insight you provide, and based on the recommendations you provide. This was a great way to engage the conversation and then decide what is the action plan that we want to do in order to identify what is the expertise they need. Do they need to hire someone new, junior or senior? Do they need maybe someone external just for a short time and hire a consultant, and so on? Maybe what they needed actually is not someone new. Maybe what they needed is training in a specific area so that they become more efficient. So again, the solution to that was not a technical solution. It was just about communication and change management. So do they need more training? Maybe yes, maybe no. What kind of skills they should develop, and should they hire someone with those skills already, or just train people about those skills? Do they need temporary help, or someone that will be onboarded full time? What can they do to educate and engage their stakeholders so that they have a greater trust in the data, in the information, recommendations, and so on? So let's see how we have 3 different areas of skills that we need to understand in order to be successful as an analyst. The first one is the business outcomes and actions. The second aspect is the enabling capabilities, and the third one is analysis. So let's look at each of those aspects. So it starts with a strategy and some goals that are communicated as business requirements and objectives to people who understand the technological capabilities and constraints of the various technologies that you're using. If you're building a website, it's different from building a mobile application. It's different from doing advertising on social media, and so on. So those are the unique characteristics of the technologies that you are using. Those people tend to have a good understanding of the information architecture, what are the functional components on your website, how to do tagging, and what is the structure and what data is available. So those are more technical skills. But what they do is they make it possible, they enable you to have the means, the tools, and the data so that someone with more of a statistical background, problem-solving approach, someone who's able to synthesize a lot of information, a lot of data into something meaningful and communicate effectively back to the stakeholder and communicate actionable insight and recommendations. So when you think of it, think about you. Think about what is your strength. In which area are you the strongest? Is it on business side? Is it on the more enabling technology side of things? Is it more in statistics and effective communication and things like that? So typically, every one of us, we have one strength, one very strong area. We have an area that we can manage. We're okay with that. We can get along with it. And the third one usually is something that either we're not interested or we're not skilled at doing. So this reinforces the importance of working as a team, finding other people who will be able to augment your ability to have an empowered analytics team and deliver more value to the organization. If you are a consultants often do implementation of digital analytics solutions. So they are in the enabling capabilities area, and their clients usually know a lot more about the business than they do, which is perfectly fine. So right there, it applies also to a consultant versus client relationship, where the consultant is there to augment the capabilities in some of those areas, but certainly not replace all of them. As a reinforcement of the fact that analysts are change agents, there's really one big difference between an analyst and a manager. The analyst has the privilege of making recommendation, but typically no power of decision. Imagine that you are the manager and the analyst comes with the recommendation you've made. Would you say yes to that? If as the analyst, you wouldn't say yes to your own recommendation, it's obviously not a good one. You need to go back to the drawing board. What are the qualities of a good digital analytics leader? You have to have a breadth of understanding. You have to be able to translate business requirements into creative, useful, meaningful solutions. A good analyst is someone who asks questions. They don't go with the obvious. They want to go beyond that. They have an ability to understand what are the needs of their stakeholders and propose the right solutions. But they also need to have a depth of knowledge. They need to have some specialist area, be it, technical skills, or be it a depth of understanding into a specific business like automotive industry. So you have different knowledge in different business disciplines are going to be very important. So think of the depth and breadth of knowledge. So the ability to operate across different disciplines is going to be important. So are you someone who understands statistics, or are you someone who understands statistics for the automotive industry, for example? That's different. So breadth versus depth of knowledge. But obviously, again, you won't be able to master everything. So depth of knowledge versus breadth of understanding. And here in this course, we want to expand your breadth of understanding of the concepts of digital analytics so that you're going to be able to apply those concepts in the specific vertical industry with the specific tools. So that will be the depth of knowledge. So focus is another aspect. You need to be able to make abstraction of what is irrelevant and focus on what is really meaningful for your analysis. Sometimes we see that in analysis where it's going a little bit all over the place and eventually come up with a conclusion that is not really well tied to the analysis process that just went on. You are detail oriented oftentimes. Motivation is what really excites you about analytics. In one way, we can consider that, for example, everybody knows how to use Excel to do spreadsheets about anything. You can be an expert at using Excel and build absolutely amazing spreadsheets. Or you could be someone who knows about budgeting and create a simple budget in Excel. So you don't have to be an expert at the tool in order to leverage it. So which way are you? Is it more the thrill of leveraging a technical tool to do something absolutely amazing? Or is it using the tool for simplifying your work from a business standpoint? So you can look at what excites you about analytics. What do you think is going to be the next big thing in this industry? Sometimes you don't have to do analytics all the time. You have to understand the concepts so that if you need, you're going to be able to find the right resources to help you out. So there's some useful tools that you can leverage. The Digital Analytics Association has, for its members only, it has a tool that allows you to do an assessment of your professional career and provides you with some guidelines on how to improve. So just the fact that you're taking this course is already a very good indication of your desire and ability to expand your horizon and learn more about digital analytics. So keep going. Couple of key takeaways. Success depends greatly on the digital maturity of your organization, but also of your own skills. You want to identify and find what are your strengths and weaknesses. You want to balance the various areas of success, and you want to reap the maximum benefits before you try to move on to the next level. The framework of the digital analytics maturity model will help you communicate or spark a conversation. I think if there's one key element you need to remember, and we'll get back to that, is the define, measure, analyze, improve, control cycle. This is going to be very useful. And it's preferable to do small incremental improvement with using agile concepts rather than trying to change big things and take big risks that can easily fail. Your own skills and the team structure, if you remember the T-shaped breadth and depth aspect, I think is going to guide you in what are your interests and what skills you want to develop over time.
Hey, want to become an expert in digital marketing? Then subscribe to the Simple Learn channel and click here to watch more such videos. To nerd up and get certified in digital marketing, click here.